Hey, everybody, it is Tony George along with the Las Vegas legend himself, Mr. Scott Spreitzer, both from Doc Sports. Welcome back to the Monday edition of the Vegas Beat, and this is what we call our postmortem show. Scott, first of all, Scott, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, man. I was lucky enough to wake up today. I always feel great when I wake up, when I'm one of the lucky ones that, gets to wake up. So, it's an interesting weekend, Tony, and we're going to kind of talk a little bit about it back and forth. But I'll tell you what, there were two fantastic games on Sunday. The Pittsburgh Jets game, which I thought was going to be a clunker, and then last night's Sunday night game. Holy cow, was that a blast.
It was a blast unless you had Baltimore as a contest pick at Circa Millions.
I had Buffalo as a contest play. So
after all the stress during the day, because I had a top pick, I didn't have to sweat out. I had the Colts. That was a rocking chair winner. That was my top play of the entire weekend. But I kind of dozed off after we had the 15-point lead with 8 minutes left laying on the couch. And I woke up to conundrum, and my wife was going, "Hey, did you see this? Wake up. You're dozing off." I'm like, "What?" So they're about ready to lose. Yeah. So, we are, by the way, we are human. But nonetheless, Scott and I are going to give you our takes, pull up a bar stool, order up a nice cold one, and we're going to talk about it. We'll start out with these are just gut reactions and kind of a couple of longtime handicappers in the tooth, so to speak. Scott and I combined about 70 years of experience, and sometimes getting a read from an old timer isn't a bad thing, because there's a lot of movies that we see every weekend. I'm referring to games as movies where we've seen that movie before. We kind of know how it's going to turn out, and so might want to tune in to some of the takes and maybe a few look aheads as well. But getting to the weekend, I'm just going to get Scott Reed on this. I think South Florida might be for real. I mean, if you think about what we have talked about, the narrative over the 30-some years both of I have been doing this, whenever you get an underdog team like South Florida playing a ranked team, especially opening day, and they pull off the upset, not only do they pull an upset, they pulled out a can of whoop ass on Boise State. I mean, Boise State got beat in all four facets of the game: offense, defense, special teams, and coaching. I mean, they put a thorough butt whooping on them. Now, usually you'll talk about that team going on the road the next week against a top 13 team, an SEC team, playing in Gainesville, one of the toughest places to play in the country, as a 16-point underdog. You say, well, it's the emotional win. It's a letdown spot. What they do, they go in there and they beat the number 13 team in the country, Scott. And it wasn't a beating like they gave Boise State, but nonetheless, they pull off the upset there. Scott and I are guys that don't look at the AP poll because we don't care about the AP poll. We care about our power ratings when we're looking at these games. But Scott, you got to admit, they kind of put an exclamation point on the fact that, hey, don't discount us.
Yeah, this coaching staff's doing a great job. They've got a pretty good quarterback too. Going back to the Boise State game real quickly, I'm watching that game, and if you watch the first, I don't know, maybe it was the first quarter, Boise goes up 7-0, and I was texting back and forth a little bit with another bettor, and I'm like, man, Boise just bigger and faster than this team. This is not going to be pretty. And a bunch of guys in Vegas that I know, my circle, a lot of the VSiN guys that we work with, Tony, you and I, all coming in on South Florida in that game, a bunch. I mean, there's some sharp action going. And I'm like, this doesn't look too promising because Boise just manhandling them in the trenches. Well, that was the first 10 minutes. After that, South Florida makes a couple of adjustments and look maybe not as big as Boise, but they looked a whole lot quicker. And they boat raced them. And Boise's still a good team, folks. This is a team that's probably going to win all but maybe 2 games this year, and so on the flip side, then I come back to Florida, the Florida game, and I'm watching that. And what I like to do in week 2, people might want to jot this down for, future seasons. I know you got to wait a year now, but in week 2 in college football, I like to look at teams that won outright as an underdog in week 1, and they're an underdog again in week 2. and look to go against those teams. And, there were teams like Rice that worked outright. Houston blew them out. Rice was one of those teams. South Florida, though, was one of those teams too. And if you played that angle, you lost in week 2 because they were able to go in, hang tough with Florida. It looked like Florida was they scored that touchdown. It looked like they were going to take control. I know their fans in Gainesville were certainly feeling it. And then South Florida was able to pull off the win, the 1-point win. Here's the thing that I'm looking at, and I'm going to jump into this. We're talking about this on Monday afternoon, and I'm going to really start jumping into this on Tuesday morning, I guess. But I'm going to go back and look and see how teams that were underdogs that won outright the first 2 weeks did when they were an underdog in week 3. And who knows, it might be good against the spread. But I'm going to check that out. And I'll let you know, Tony, once we do jump into that a little bit. But now they've got to play at Miami. And Beck looked pretty good for Miami in that first game. I had him against Notre Dame, in fact, at Docs. And it's going to be interesting to find out because Miami's laying a good 16 and a half points in that game. And it might be baked into the number already.
Right.
Thinking South Florida can't do this 3 times in a row, can't play, a close ball game and give Miami fits and cover the spread at least. I mean, they're going to be gassed. That's what a lot of people are going to think. So going to jump in. I bet you that's happened very few times. Outright underdog wins 2 weeks in a row, underdog third game. I mean, it's probably going to be such a small sample size. It ain't even going to be worth talking about. And then we got to decide if we want to take those points or not, but your gut feeling is how can they do it a third straight time?
Yeah.
Emotional in both of those games, especially last week. That's going to be tough to overcome that emotional swing that they've had 2 weeks in a row, but we'll see.
Well, the Boise game was pretty much decided, so it wasn't a huge last-second emotional win like the game against Florida, which is going to drain you. And this is a little bit when talent and depth after 2 weeks of that comes into play a little bit more, really. And Miami is looking like the best team in the ACC. Clemson had to come from 16-0 behind this week. I mean, that was a crazy game. A couple of things I wanted to talk about was something that you mentioned. Last week, like you said, I was out in Vegas for contest week, and that's when Scott and I hooked up at the Mega Bar at Circus and had a concept for this show. Hey, let's just sit around and do a postmortem every Monday and give folks our thoughts. And that, because Scott and I, unfortunately, haven't worked together basically over the last 3 years. We did a little Super Bowl show last year in Vegas. But other than that, we got to get hooked back up together because I need to hone my broadcasting skills. The only way I can do that is going up against the best. And that would be.
I think we ought to do a show at Arrowhead one of these weeks. Come on, I'll fly back.
Well, I sent you a picture from Arrowhead during the Husker game.
Yeah, I'm sitting there and I'm watching Mr. and Mrs. Swift, in the press box, or not the press box, but in a suite. I knew you were in the suite with your wife and your daughter and a couple of friends, and I'm like, all right, now why do we got to keep looking at Mr. and Mrs. Swift when we got the beautiful Mrs. George in a suite right next to them with her awesome handicapping husband, and they just wouldn't switch. He wouldn't switch. So but anyway. I texted, speaking of the same old movie, I've seen this movie before. I think I texted that to you during the Cincinnati game. And I'm like, I've seen this movie before. A couple of Nebraska boys here talking to you folks. Both are Husker fans. We've gone through a lot the last decade or two. But the bottom line is I was like, I've seen this movie before. And then guess what? Matt Rule flipped the switch and we won a close one. So it's a little bit different 2 weeks ago. But anyway, I'll be out there. You invite me to Arrowhead towards the end of the season so I can feel that Nebraska cold that I missed for so many years. Well, Missouri cold in this case, but same thing. Then I'll be glad to be there.
Well, it was interesting because they were in the suite next to us, and there's a glass plane, and Taylor Swift was sitting 10 feet from us, and Patrick Mahomes, and they had a bar out there in the hallway that just serviced those two suites. Mm-hmm. And so while security was heavy, my young daughter, who just a couple years, 3 or 4 years older than your daughter, Taylor Swift walked right by her. My daughter said something to her. She stopped her and says, "Hi, how you doing?" Nice. So she got to talk to Taylor Swift. So at that point to her, the game was immaterial. She was walking around on clouds the rest of the night. This, that, and the other. But one thing I talked about last week on my free play video, I gave out Mississippi State, and for a couple leans, I said the two biggest narratives, much like what you mentioned about South Florida.
Yeah.
A lot of the narrative was South Florida, and you couldn't get behind it. And I don't like getting behind consensus narratives either. And last week it was SMU and Duke. Everybody was on them. And I said, be careful of both of those. And I had predicted Duke or Illinois to be in the conversation of winning a Big Ten. I had Chris Schmidt from Hell Varsity Radio in Lincoln, the Average Joe Show. I used to do with him and Bill Dolman back in the day. Scott knows all about that. But anyway, I have him on every year after Big Ten Media Day. And he told me one of the teams you need to keep an eye on is Illinois, bringing back 19 starters. And if you don't think Illinois is for real in the Big Ten, you got another thing coming, Scott.
Yeah, Lenny and I did a dark horse playoff video, 6 weeks ago probably. And I talked about 5 college football teams, or we did, and Illinois was one of those teams. And but I did have a 1-star, believe it or not, on Duke on Saturday. I also had Mississippi State, but yeah, Illinois is for real. And the thing is you can, like, people can say, well, how can you have a dark horse to potentially make the playoffs and then go against them in week 2 or whatever? Well, because you can lose a couple of games nowadays and make it to the playoffs the way things are set up. Yeah. And so, but Illinois, that was the game that I was wrong on. There's no doubt about that when it came to the plays I released this last week. I had Mississippi State with you. That was also a premium play for me. And they were able to knock off Arizona State. But, oh, my gosh, it's 17-0 Bulldogs. Yeah. And, I'm thinking, all right, cool. This is good. This is good. And then next thing you know, it's 17-17. Now, I know that most customers who got that pick, or clients who came on board and got that pick on a Thursday afternoon at Docs or Thursday evening or after, only got 6.5. They didn't get the 7 as it was on like last Monday. And so I'm sitting there, and it's first and goal, Arizona State at the 2-yard line with 1:40 to go or something like that. Anyway, they can't get a touchdown on 3 plays. And I'm like, holy cow, kick a field goal. You can win this game by 3. We cover, Tony. Yeah. They did kick the field goal. And then Miss State goes right down the field and scores the game winner, and they deserved to win that game. But when it was first and goal at the 2 with 1:40, I kept thinking, here we go. Touchdown with about 40 seconds left, kick the extra point, we lose by half a point, or the folks that got it late in the week lose by half a point. And no, it didn't go that way. So that I put in the old fortunate win column. But yeah, you're right about Illinois. Going back to Illinois, the Illini are for real, and they can match up with anybody in the conference. There's no, and I'm including the Buckeyes with that. Yeah, if and when the time comes, they have the play in the trenches that can match up with all these Big Ten schools. And not only that, but you got a quarterback who returns from last year who is extremely confident. And when I watch the players, Tony, around him, they are so confident in what he can do. Yeah. Even when things start to break down. One of the reasons I took the Dukies last week was Illinois had, I believe they were 5-0 in 1-score games last year. And 2 of those 1-score games went to overtime. One was against lowly Purdue last year, and one was against Nebraska. Could have lost both. They could have been 1-4 instead of 5-0. They were all last-second wins. They're not quite the Chiefs of the 1-score games last year. But the bottom line is, I thought, this looks like one of those things where they could win by 7-10, but I don't know if their fortune is going to hold up in 1-score games. Well, they didn't have to worry about it. They kicked the shit out of them. Excuse my language. Can I say that? That's what I was saying on Saturday. They kicked the crap out of them. Excuse me, everybody. I try not to do that stuff. But when you're talking
Scott, nobody gives a shit.
I try not to, because you know what happens when I do Vegas radio or national radio or ESPN or VSiN or what have you. If you get into the habit of doing that, it comes out sometimes. So I try hard. But see, we're just talking, one-on-one here, and then the real language starts coming out. At least the language I was using on Saturday morning.
Well, it is. And one more note on college football. A couple more notes. What a job by Army. I watched that whole game. There were a lot of people that, K-State had lost to Iowa State. By the way, Iowa State's a really good football team. with a really good quarterback and a really good head coach and a really good football game on that was one of our free plays on the gridiron. Was Iowa State. But what Army did after losing to Tarleton State and then coming back and beating K-State, it's very difficult to beat Kansas State in Manhattan. Kansas State was in the discussion and maybe still is. I'm not going to say we're throwing in the towel on them to win the Big 12 this year, along with Arizona State. And of course, both those teams lost this weekend straight up as favorites, big favorites. And as far as I'm concerned, if you're on the road laying over 5, you're a big favorite against another Power 4 team. But Kansas State there in that game proved to me that, that quarterback they have might be a little bit overrated. He could not do anything in that ball game.
Yeah, Avery Johnson, I agree.
Yeah.
There's just something missing from his game.
Yeah.
And I kind of saw, but I thought he would be okay this year. And I was shocked. I didn't have K-State Army. I like everybody, I was shocked. What in the Bill Snyder is going on in Manhattan, Kansas right now. Yeah. I watched that week 0 game. They outgained Iowa State by 70 or 80 yards. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was like thinking, okay, it's time for K-State to panic. They, play that game 10 times. My thinking at the time, play that game 10 times, they probably win 5, against Iowa State. You outgained it by 70 yards or whatever it was. And then they did have a little bit of a downer, last week. They went up against a decent FCS program and, they had to pull out the win. All right, I can even look past that. Here's what happened to me last Tuesday. I'm sitting there looking at this game and I'm going, finally, they got a team that they can get it together against and maybe pound a little bit here when it comes to Army. Army, as you mentioned, off that ugly, ugly loss. Yeah. And so I'm looking at the game and I swear it was that close. It almost became a premium play. I started digging deeper and you know what I saw? 17 Kansas State players listed as questionable, reason undisclosed. So I'm thinking, okay, something's probably going on in the locker room. Maybe. I mean, I haven't proved that. But the bottom line was, I was like, okay, I'm pulling back on this one. I'm pumping the brakes. Yep. But because they were like a 17-point favorite. So I thought they're going to win. They just might win by 10 to 14 points. So I stayed away from the game. I saw a stat on Sunday when I was going over Saturday's games this week. And I saw a stat where Army had the ball 27 out of 30 minutes in the second half.
Yeah.
I mean, listen, Kleiman is one of my favorite coaches in college football. So something weird's going on at K-State. First of all, I'm not, like you mentioned, the quarterback, there's something missing from his game. He's got talent, but there's something. And I don't know what's going on right now behind the scenes, but it's pretty scary. And again, this was a team that I was touting as being a contender for the Big 12. Yeah. Top 3 finish.
Yeah, always with that coach too, and plus it's just such a brutal place.
It's tough.
Being a Nebraska fan and living in Lincoln 25 years, I've been down there 10 or 12 times in the Little Apple, and it's that. Let me tell you something. That is no joke down there to go play. And just real quickly, we'll switch gears to the NFL. He's Scott Spreitzer. I'm Tony George. We do reside at DocSports.com. And we do have a free $60. You can see the link below me here. We park $60 in any new account, comes with a profit guarantee and absolutely no hassles. So you're watching videos on YouTube. Scott and I put out free plays every day. So's 90% of the guys over there. You're here for free stuff. Okay? Go get a free $60 and go get premium plays and get a guarantee on them. It doesn't get any better than that, folks. That's the pitch. And by the way, we're not blowing smoke up your ass. It's a real deal. That's why Docs has been around. And you got any questions about it? We got a live customer service where people will actually talk to you and answer your questions and help you. Now, how old school is that? Compliments of our buddy Wade Mosman. That's how Wade likes to run. He's old school. And that's why Scott and I have found a home here, by the way, I might add as well. But one more question.
Okay.
Do you put more stock in Oklahoma or do you put less stock in Michigan? Now, I'm tell you what I'm going to do.
Okay.
I'm going to put less stock in Michigan. I'm going to keep Oklahoma as a darn good football team, but you got a hell of an SEC schedule in front of you. And Mateer's the real deal. We knew that even last year at Washington. They paid him a lot of money to come down there and play this year. But Michigan looks like they have an 18-year-old quarterback. Bear in mind, Michigan, when they beat New Mexico out first down them. in that game. Michigan is. I feel good about our beloved Huskers, my alma mater, your home, our home state team. Next week, I'm going up to that Michigan game in Lincoln, Scott. But I will tell you this, the 20th. But I'm going to tell you something right now. This isn't the same Michigan team of the past 3 or 4 years. And so I'm not going to overreact to Oklahoma beating Michigan. And everybody kind of, because you still have that thought in your mind last year, Oklahoma really sucked last year. Oklahoma was a MASH unit, a triage unit, especially offensively last year. They do have a good defense, but Michigan's going to have some growing pains in my mind with that quarterback. He's just real young.
After watching that game, and I kind of watched it on replay, I was, again, late Saturday nights, being a night owl, doing some baseball handicapping, that kind of stuff for Sunday. I've got the game on in my office and I'm watching it, and a couple things caught my attention. I'd go back and rewind and all that. I'm a little more down on Michigan than I am hooray Oklahoma.
Right.
And again, it's like I'm looking at Underwood, and I had mentioned after the New Mexico game, he looked cool, calm, the whole thing, totally confident, had the players' attention around him. And then when times get a little bit tough against OU, he goes berserk on the sideline.
Yeah.
That's a little worrisome. And I don't care if you're 18 or 25. If you're 18 and you're quarterbacking a team that is a perennial national title contender, you can't go nutso on the sideline at your fellow players when you're 18-year-old freshman, and they got to figure that out. But here's what I'm really ticked off at myself about. You have a Venables coached team, which means defense first, defense second. And they're hosting a freshman quarterback making his second start ever and his first ever start on the road and his first start against a competitive football team. And I don't play Oklahoma.
Yeah.
That's a mistake, and sometimes you overlook those things, and it's easy to see, hindsight's 20/20. It's easy to see after the fact. And so that's a play where I think if I had to go back and do it, you don't play Michigan. You either stay away from the game or you play the Sooners. As far as you're right about their injuries last year. It was crazy.
Yeah.
They go 3-6 down the stretch. They had a ton of injuries, but I don't think they're all that. And I think they're going to struggle in the SEC.
Yeah.
Not defensively, maybe when they get worn down, if they do struggle. That schedule is nasty tough, the Oklahoma Sooners, if you look at their schedule. And I think in the SEC, they're going to get their comeuppance a little bit, not because of Mateer, but because of the offense around him and the play calling. And as far as Michigan, man, I saw Portnoy just screaming and yelling about, the way they were coached. Now, I know he gets a little crazy because, that's how you draw in viewers by, acting crazy sometimes. But the bottom line is I'm watching that. And I had said when Harbaugh left, boy, I hope they don't, for Michigan's sake, move more to the head coaching spot. I think for Michigan to eventually get back to the promised land, so to speak, and be a legit contender, it's going to have to be under a different head coach. I don't like his coaching style. Yeah. They have a pretty soft schedule. I think 8-4 is likely out of Michigan this year, despite the fact that the offense looks so bad in Norman. I give credit to Venables, obviously, and his defensive coaches on that win.
I think that game in Nebraska, I'll be curious to see what that line's going to be. And that coach that's one of the games he's going to sit out as head coach as part of his suspension. Regardless of that, Nebraska has the better quarterback and has the better coaching staff. And that's going to be I can't wait to get up there and go to that game. Of course, I'll drop you a few picks.
Well, as a Husker fan, Tony, I'm going to say real quickly, as a Husker fan, I started getting a little bit too excited for the Michigan game. I'm trying to pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Because
I'm not going to have anything out on it at all because I'm going to go enjoy it. No side, no total, no first half. I did put out the first half line in the Cincinnati game. And, of course, then they made a valiant – we like to let people come back in the second half. So I thought we could get them early. And so I was right there. But there'll be very few plays on Nebraska this year unless I fade them. But switching gears to the NFL, of course, everybody in the whole universe is talking about the Baltimore Ravens and the Buffalo game. And one of the great football games, I was able to rewatch it today. Here without the commercials, get a fast forward through it. But one thing came to mind. There's nobody that's lost more one-score games outside of Nebraska than the Baltimore Ravens. And a lot of people give me a lot of shit about living in Kansas City most of the year now, but being a Chiefs fan my whole life because I grew up 3 hours north of here.
Mhm.
But the difference, the reason Kansas City has been to 6 straight AFC championship games is they win one-score games. They know how to close games. The reason Baltimore and Lamar Jackson haven't got the Super Bowl is they can't close the damn things out. They can't do it. That's why they're not there, and Kansas City is. Mahomes and company, who do you want the ball? Who's more talented, Jackson or Mahomes? I don't know. Maybe Jackson, maybe by a smidge. But who do you want quarterback in your team when your balls are on the chopping block? You want Mahomes because he wins games. And these guys, for whatever reason, whether it's Harbaugh coaching or whatever, they just can't seem to get it done in the big moments. And that game there, Scott, has long-lasting effects because it's going to come down to, I don't know if it's going to come down. Kansas City's likely to start out 0-2 right now. So, because they're playing Philly this week, and we all saw what Philly did in the Super Bowl, and not a whole hell of a lot has changed since that game. But the bottom line is you're probably going to see Buffalo, and you are going to see Buffalo and Baltimore late into the postseason, and that game had home field advantages. That was a huge game last night, and they just took a giant piss down their leg the last 6 minutes, Scott.
Yeah, it's really a shame for Baltimore because I think they've got like 4 out of their next 5 are at home, something like that. And if they start out with a win in Buffalo, and then you got like 4 out of your next 5 at home, it's going to be a tough team to catch when it comes to home field advantage, as you mentioned, in the playoffs. And it slipped away. Derrick Henry, unbelievably huge game, and then fumbles the football late and opens the door. And one of the things, is kind of funny because last night I was, again, texting with a couple of bettors, and one of them lives in California, one of them here in Vegas, and they've got futures on the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. And we're kind of discussing during the game, and I said, the one area, excuse me, that Baltimore has issues is the safety position. They're rough in the safety area. And I'm like, I think what's going to happen, they always tend to play a different style of football in the playoffs than they do in the regular season. I don't know why. And so they dominate the regular season, then they get to the postseason, and it's almost, I don't want to say timid, but it's almost like a timid approach when it gets to the postseason. Their secondary this year isn't good enough to overcome a clunker by the offense. And once you saw late in the game, the last couple of the drives by Buffalo, Josh Allen was just tearing them up, through the air. He had a huge game. And so it just kind of like magnified their issue. But I'm watching the game last night. It's 40-25. There's maybe 4.5 minutes to go. And Josh Allen turns to his left, throws the football. It was dropped by a Baltimore defender. Looked like it was going to be a pick around the 50. And in fact, they called it on the field. They called it an INT. And then when they reviewed it, you could see he didn't have it. So it was ruled incomplete. But I had a buddy of mine said when he thought it was the INT, he goes, game over. And here's my thinking with 4.5 minutes to go. I'm like, well, they just ruled it incomplete, but game over anyway. They're not going to, And then Derrick Henry fumbled that football. And Josh Allen, man, you give him an opening, he's going to take it. I'm a little bit concerned about Buffalo's ground game. It was non-existent for most of the game last night. Now, I know the last 6-7 minutes of the game when you're down 15 and you were down 8 earlier, you can't be just running the football. So that's part of it. But still, this Baltimore team, I mean, I'm watching that. I'm like, I was saying to a couple of buddies, I'm like, can you imagine knowing you got to play this team? This is coming up on your schedule. They are nasty. They play hard. They hit hard. I mean, they kick your ass sideways on the field. And I'm sitting there going, I don't know that I would want to be playing this team, but yet they found a way to lose, and Buffalo beat them again. And it's tough because, to answer how you started it about Mahomes or Lamar, I think raw talent, Lamar's more talented. And I'm not, I don't want to make a living off the difference, you know what I mean? But he's a little bit more talented. He runs better. He wasn't a good pocket passer when he first came in the league. He's developed himself and worked his butt off. He's a good pocket passer now. He's also a great guy. I love Lamar Jackson. But last night I had the Buffalo Bills in my contest at the Circa and the Westgate. So I was rooting hard for Buffalo. When Derrick Henry dropped that, it was I felt like a 15-year-old typing OMG. I mean, it was crazy. But so, yeah, I mean, Baltimore's going to be there. The difference is when they get to the postseason, they better continue to play offensively the way they do in the regular season, because the secondary, I don't think is good enough to carry them.
I think Joe Brady, you paid Cook all that money in a holdout, and he has 40-some yards running the ball, but I don't think offensive coordinator Joe Brady gives a rat's ass. You want the ball in Josh Allen's hands. Exactly. And the one thing they do to make up for, quote unquote, the lack of running game, a lot of their throws to the running backs are in the backfield, and he breaks a lot of them. They kind of utilize those running backs as receivers, but slice running backs out of the backfield because, you want Josh Allen making the last minute decisions.
Oh, absolutely.
He's such a talented guy.
Best quarterback in the league. I mean, with all due respect to Lamar and to Mahomes, best quarterback in the league.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree. I could not agree more. You got, and it's a gnat's ass difference between the three of them. But when you're right up there and considered in the rarefied air of Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and even Mahomes to a certain degree. I don't think he's lost his shine yet, but nonetheless, you're always going to be in every ball game with those three. Interesting, in the preseason, we saw a lot of scoring, which usually you don't this year. And I've always maintained, Scott, in my 30-some years of doing this, that early in the season, for the most part, I said this on the Docs Daily and the Gridiron Show last week, early on, you can find some value in the unders because defenses early on are usually ahead of the offenses. And there's only 3 overs so far in the NFL, including the Thursday and the Friday game. And I don't see a lot of promise for the over tonight either, with a couple of big question marks at quarterback. We're taping this before the Monday Night Football game, folks. But one game that surprised, of all the things that surprised me, did it surprise me that Miami got their ass kicked? No, because I had Indy as a top pick because Miami is just flat out weak up front and they're poorly coached.
Horribly coached, horribly managed.
Yeah. But in the trenches is where you're going to win and lose these games. And the Colts got a top 3 offensive line. You saw it on display. They have a sneaky good defensive line. And Daniel Jones looked like Peyton Manning. And of course, they got a good 1-2 punch at running back. They ran it for 168 yards. But at the end of the day, that didn't surprise me. But what did surprise me was 60-plus points in the Jets and Steelers game. That was my only loss I had the under in the Green Bay-Detroit game. And I had the under in the Jets game. Then I had a teaser that hit, and I had the Colts. So I went 3-1.
Nice.
It hit the top pick, but I really liked that total almost as good as I did the Colts. And I'm glad I didn't flip-flop, because I really thought that Rodgers would struggle, and the Jets, the strength of their team is their defense. Now, Justin Fields played the best game that he ever played in his life. He was damn near perfect in that game, in that system, which gives you a lot of hope if you're a Jets fan, because the Pittsburgh Steelers defense is no friggin' joke.
Right.
I mean, but whether it was neither defense was ready or both offenses are that good, I don't know what my takeaway is from, other than, holy shit, I can't believe they scored 60 points, Scott.
That game almost was a premium play for me. All week long, I was talking about, okay, I'm going to be playing, when I was talking with friends, I'm going to be playing the under of the Pittsburgh game. And I held off. And, it was just, because, man, those offenses were clicking. I'll say one thing that I liked about the Jets more than I liked about Pittsburgh was the ground game. Breece Hall is back. I mean, he's healthy. And if you saw, if you watched the Jets last year, then that this is one of the worst rushing teams in all of the NFL last year. They averaged about, I think it was like 91 yards rushing per game in 2024. Well, there was plenty of time to go in the game on Sunday, and they had already hit $180. They had 180 rushing yards. And so if they're able to continue running like that, and Justin Fields, they let him do his thing, which does mean he's got to roll out a little bit once in a while, not just drop straight back, and let him pull the ball down and run with it. then they're going to have a chance to win some games and steal some games. As far as the Steelers, I'd be a little concerned because they are a defensive team that they got gashed on the ground the way they did. They were blown off the line of scrimmage by the Jets when it came to the ground game. That's worrisome if I'm a Pittsburgh Steelers backer moving forward. I thought Rodgers played extremely well. I got to bring up my phone here because I wanted to see if there was anything I wanted to mention.
That is the best game that Aaron Rodgers has played in 2 years.
Yeah. See, this is where are we at here, folks? This is me. This is like the first half of the early games. I'm sitting there, I'm not on social media a lot because I'm usually playing 2 games that I'm watching for in-game betting. But week 1, I don't do any in-game betting. All I do is take notes. So that was the first half. You saw those notes of the early games. And I did put in there, Jets kickoff turnover. They don't turn that over, they probably win the game. I did put in there, as we just talked about, Jets 31st in rushing yards per game last year, had 170 plus at the time I typed this on my notes. 60-yard field goal, of course. This is funny. I gotta mention that I did hit this on X or Twitter, whatever you want to call it, yesterday. It was weak doink in the NFL, as I call it. And I'm talking about the place kickers hitting uprights, missing wide right, wide left. And Boswell for Pittsburgh hits the 60-yarder late to win the game. Otherwise, the Jets pull off the win. But I had referred to our friend and a very close friend of mine, Dave Koken, for many, many years. That guy, he despised place kickers like you wouldn't believe with the passion.
I know. I've watched.
I was ready to call the NFL office a few times and going, listen, I got this guy who wears a Kango hat. He's about 5'6". He's about 120 pounds soaking wet. You might want to watch out for him and put some security out there because he's going after kickers. Well, unfortunately, we lost Dave, a little over a year ago now. Yep. Great friend of mine. But I was saying yesterday on X, I'm like, I hope they got a 7-second delay in heaven because if they don't, they do now after experiencing Coke and watching these kickers. And then immediately after I do that, Boswell kicks a 60-yarder for the win. So, but what an exciting game. And I thought that was going to be the most exciting game of the week until the Sunday night game.
One other one, a couple of takeaways I had. Penix Jr. is going to be a friggin' good player for Atlanta. That's one. These are just notes I wrote down.
Right.
Also, I think that Houston, I took them yesterday. One of my contest picks I lost along with Baltimore, 3-2 day. They had their chances in that game. Houston has no offensive line still. They did not address this in the off season. You're going to get that kid killed back there. And CJ Stroud is a talent, and he's got weapons. Even though he's got young receivers, they're quick and they're talented. That's one takeaway that I had yesterday is they're just going to struggle. And the other
talking about the Falcons or the Texans?
I'm talking about the 2 points. The Texans, no offensive line. Penix, a stud quarterback.
Can I say something about the Falcons real quick?
Yeah,
because we ought to have a Bash the Coaches show once in a while. I'm watching that game again with my notes here, and I reminded myself of it this morning. And the Falcons were leading, with a couple minutes to go. I'm going to just bring it up here because it's really worth repeating if folks aren't watching that game closely. Okay, here's the deal. You've got Baker Mayfield. He's 12 for 26. Couple minutes to go in the game. 12 for 26. They're getting beat 17, or was it 20-17? So the offense isn't doing much. Atlanta in their base defense is just, messing with Tampa Bay big time. The Bucs couldn't do much. So in that last 2-minute drive, Baker goes 5 for 6, 60 yards, 25-yard touchdown pass to close out the game with the game-winning touchdown. And what does Atlanta do on that final drive? They go 5-man rush. Yeah. 5-man rush after shutting him. He was 12 for 26, Tony. Yeah. They were shutting him completely down for 58 minutes, and they never got out of it. Even the announcers were talking about it. Why are they still in a 5-man rush? As he methodically did what he wanted to, Baker Mayfield, and move the ball down the field. And I'm like, okay, maybe the first couple of plays, they're in their own territory, around their own 35. You throw a 5-man rush. Once you see that you can't get to the quarterback and he's picking you apart, you get out of it. They didn't do it.
Yeah.
That is horrible coaching. If I'm a Falcons backer, fan, bet, or whatever, yesterday, I'm pulling my hair out. It was just terrible coaching. One of the worst coaching jobs. It was in the final 2 minutes of the Falcons game last night.
And I will tell you, you doing a bad coaching job against Baker Mayfield is not a recipe for success. Because I'll tell you one thing. regardless of how bad Tampa looked in that game, and I watched a lot of it, that Baker Mayfield is a poor man's Brett Favre. I mean, you cannot, with another guy, if you got 1:30 left and 80 yards to go, and you cherry pick the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL that you want behind center in that spot, Baker Mayfield's in my top 5. That guy can win ball games. This is a guy that they had 5 turnovers last year in Detroit, and they still won with him at quarterback, last-minute heroics. And, Scott, I wrote these down, all this writing here. Those were my notes I was taking during first halves of the NFL games and during the games as well. So two old timers.
I'm going to tell you right now, you should be a doctor. I mean, your writing is worse than doctors. I mean,
I know it.
You either worked for UPS or you studied medicine. I mean, that's some serious chicken scratch, brother.
I don't even know what the hell this means.
That's why
I can't decipher it this morning. It's like looking at like Egyptian.
2 years ago, I switched to typing in my notes because I can't read my writing the next day.
Right, exactly. Well, folks, we're going to do this every Monday. Be sure and come visit us at docsports.com. Scott, I know you've got we've got baseball, WNBA, of course, football cards come out on Thursday. And, of course, you're doing free picks every day. Tell the folks also, I know you do some extracurricular shows during the week here on the YouTube channel. What are they?
Yeah, we got a top 5 college football countdown that I post every Wednesday evening. And it's not midnight. It's usually around 9 p.m. Eastern time, give or take. So you can check for that. Real good response last week from everybody watching the top 5 countdown. And you either went 2-1 or 3-2. It depends on when you got the Iowa Hawkeyes. They either pushed or they got the cover if you got it late. And then we're starting this week now that I've got some material. I only had one play on Sunday, by the way, in the NFL, Tony. So starting this week is when I kick it into gear with multiple plays. I like to, a lot of guys like yourself jump in and you've got good stuff and you go 3-1. And for me, after starting like 0-7 last year, I said, that's it. No more week ones of going crazy. Ended up having my best college and pro football year in a long, long time, but I started 0-7 or something like that in the NFL. So I knew I wasn't going to do any worse than 0-1 this past Sunday. But what I'm going to do now that we've had a week under our belt and some data, I'll also have a top 5 countdown in the NFL separate from the college football countdown. So the top 5 in college will be Wednesday evenings. The top 5 in the NFL will be Thursday evenings. And of course, they're up forever once you post them over at the Docs YouTube channel. And I always tell people, subscribe, click the little bell, all that kind of good stuff. That way they never miss any of our videos. Soccer, we jumped into it. Sunday, we had a plus 150 dog with Austin, and we'll be doing soccer every day. People can check that out. Tony, near and dear to your heart, little NASCAR. I ended up on Logano plus $150 with the matchup over Christopher Bell, and we're able to cash that. So I go 0-1 in the NFL. I had the over in the Raiders game, which never came close, but we're able to have a small profit because we had that plus $150 in NASCAR, the plus $155 in soccer. And so check for those plays too. And Tony's a big NASCAR guy.
3-0. 3-0 yesterday, baby.
In NASCAR?
I had Logano matched up. We had 11-3 my last 14 NASCAR picks.
Beautiful.
And of course, but whatever he's doing right there, folks, he's one of the best to have ever done it. And you can find him every day at docsports.com.
Well, and I'm not, we're not here to kiss each other's butts, but I'm going to say the truth, and I always do, candid, that there's very few guys that I want to talk to if we're talking NASCAR betting. It's tough. You got to pay attention, and it's tough to pay. These 4.5 hour races. If NASCAR's smart, they reduce everything to about a 2.5 hour race eventually, and then people will start watching again. That's another story. But if I'm going to talk NASCAR capping and betting, it's going to be with Tony George. I mean, seriously, I'm not kidding, folks, and we're not here to pat each other on the back, but that's the God honest truth. And so you can check either one of us out if you're into the circuit. There's only a couple of races left of the playoffs.
Right.
Having said all of that, top 5 countdowns, college football and NFL Wednesday and Thursday nights, daily individual game releases, whether it be baseball or football, what have you. And then I want to say real quickly that starting Sunday nights, and we're talking late, but I'm an overnight guy, myself and Scott Rickenbach are going to start a Sunday night show talking about some early value for the upcoming week of football with some of the line moves, the sharps. Right. That'll be starting this coming Sunday night, Monday morning. So if you wake up on Monday morning because Sunday night's too late, it'll certainly be there on the Doc's YouTube channel.
There you go, folks. And of course, I do the NFL opening line report every Tuesday morning. Kind of got a cult following there. The Gridiron Six Pack. The last 2 years with Griff Murphy, 220 some game sample size, 62%.
Wow, nice, excellent work
for free. And we open 62%. If my premiums were 62%, I'd be a gazillionaire. But at the end of the day, that shows every Wednesday. We went 4-2 this week to open up the show. And I should mention that Scott did mention the Iowa State game pushing. We gave out Iowa State first half minus the 1.5. So they were up, 13-3 or whatever. They were covering. So nonetheless, folks, tune in to the Doc Sports YouTube channel. And thanks for tuning in. We'll be here every Monday afternoon, bitching and moaning or celebrating. Scott Spreitzer, the legend right there, and myself on the Vegas Beat. Thanks for stopping by.